Greetings, greetings, and welcome to Sacred Conversations. This is an ongoing series with the Deans of Sacred Journey Interfaith Seminary. I'm Reverend Cardona. I'm here with Reverend Dr. Grace Telesco. We're calling this episode Anchored in Spirit because we've come to the conclusion that the only way we're going to get through difficult times that rattle our faith is by being anchored in spirit. And so I'm going to welcome you and also welcome any questions you might have once this podcast has dropped. We're happy to answer any questions at another time because we want this to be an ongoing series with ongoing conversation, sacred conversation. And so hello to my beloved friend and seminary partner, Reverend Grace Telesco. How are you?
I'm great. How are you, Revlo?
You. Really, I'm fine. Good to see you. Really happy to be here.
Good to see you too. This is part of our spiritual practice, and not only our commitment to the seminary, but our commitment to one another.
Yes.
And so let's begin with a prayer. And I'm using "Gorillas of Grace" by Ted Loder, which Dean Laurie has always talked about when we do the seminary class called "Praying with People." She always gives this as an example. So I'm going to read one of the prayers I think is appropriate for our conversation today. Gentle One, Holy One, guide us now into an unclenched moment, a deep breath, a letting go of heavy expectancies, of shriveling anxieties, of dead certainties. These often soften our silence, surround us by the light, open us up to the mystery. May we be found by wholeness, upheld by the unfathomable, entranced by the simple, and filled with the joy that is you. And in all your names we pray. Blessed be. Om Shanti Shanti. So anchored by spirit. It's that's a great. I think that's a great title and a great way to begin the podcast to talk about the fact that we don't feel very anchored lately, that we don't feel very grounded, that we're all over the place. And I know that there's a lot of folks that we talk to on a regular basis that are really struggling to make sense of the world and what's happening. So let me ask you this, when the chaos of political unrest feels overwhelming, what spiritual practice from your tradition, or any tradition for that matter, help you stay grounded?
Yeah, after a moment of not feeling very grounded, we have to acknowledge that first we feel upset. We feel the upset. We have feelings of outrage at times, of helplessness at times. And the reason we need to be grounded in spirit is because we don't want to become part of the rage. We don't want to become so angry that we're not doing any good at all. As spiritual leaders in our communities, we want to provide a hopeful voice. And so we rely on our spiritual practices. And as interfaith ministers, we can sort of, take samplings of the consistent messages through different faith practices, especially the mystic studies, that ask us to do our best at any given time to try and be a little bit of a witness, not to just what's going on, but what's going on within ourselves. Because if we become so caught up in our upset, then our hearts will start to harden, and we don't want that to happen. We want to be able to use the practices of, for me, A Course in Miracles, doing my daily readings, trying to apply my lessons, having spiritual community, which I think we'll talk about later, taking time in the morning to do spiritual practice before you engage in the world, before you look at the world and what's going on out there, because there will be those upsets. And so we need to have some foundation, some grounded foundation. And one of the things that I've been noticing lately as people are trying to provide words of hopefulness come from some cultural heroes, one of whom we lost just recently, Jane Goodall. One of her quotes is, "Together we can bring change to the world gradually by replacing fear and hate with compassion and love." And you might say, well, how can I? And, we can dig deeper into how we can love by keeping mindful of where our mind goes and where our heart is, and looking at where we can be loving and trying not to focus on where our anger is. I mean, there's things that we can do in our communities. The No Kings March is coming up on Saturday. We can be peaceful in our protests. So we don't want to fan the flames of outrage. We want to somehow take comfort in knowing that there are people who want peace, who want to find balance in the imbalance in what we perceive as cruelty out there. Another one, from Anne Frank. This one is old and ancient, not ancient, but it's an old quote. But think about where it came from. It came from from her time of the worst of times, during the Holocaust. And she said, yet, even though she was in prison, or she was in hiding, isn't it wonderful to know that we do not need to wait one moment more before doing our part to improve the world. So, what is our part? Our part is whatever it is we can do at any given moment, whether it is how we march peacefully, whether it is the conversations we have with others. It's so easy to get into angry, hateful conversations. That's the easy stuff. How do we find places to focus on shifting our own hearts? So my spiritual practice is just that, the little bits and pieces that I can find through faith practices or through these cultural heroes.
I'm glad yeah, I'm sorry.
I said, how about you?
Yeah, so I'm really glad you brought up cultural heroes, and like one that I was going to just like mention was Gandhi. And I know like the phrase "be the change you wish to see in the world" is not exactly the words that he said. What he actually said is even more potent. If we could change ourselves, the tendencies in the world would also change. And so this makes me think about everything that we see. And you say, you get an upset. Well, all you got to do is just open up your smartphone for a second, and like you'll be bombarded with news items that will upset you very much. And so you think about what are the traditions, or the spiritual practices from various traditions. I think that there's three choices, just like there's three speeds, let's say, in a car, let's say, right? One speed is to, as you said, just get angry, just feel hopeless, be depressed, be despairing, be rage filled, think really negative thoughts and bad thoughts about, how we can just like kind of picture in our minds certain views, let's say, or certain behaviors like exploding right before our very eyes, like get rid of that, eject button, get rid of this. So we spend a lot of time, I think, with that choice or that speed, which is anger, despair, right? The second speed is exactly what you're talking about earlier, which is catching ourselves and catching our thoughts and in immersing ourselves, like Gandhi's saying, in changing ourselves. I could be better. You say all the time that really great saying, rise higher, forgive readily,
Love steadily.
love steadily, right? So, I mean, those are really, really wonderful words to live by, and those are spiritual practices. A third choice is to just sort of become grounded in the knowing that this is a virtual reality ride. You want to talk about artificial intelligence? Well, this is all artificial intelligence in the Hindu tradition, anyway, in the Hindu practice, Vedanta specifically, but Buddhist also, and any of the mystic teachings also say, just boil this down to the simplest, which is, I am a perfect soul. My soul cannot be destroyed. My mind can be destroyed. My personality can be destroyed, but not the soul. The soul is made up of the same ingredients as this divine source. Easier said than done, though. easier said than done for me anyway. And when I was involved with Darshan regularly, weekly, I was sort of forced as a, I don't know how to use any other word, but like pastor or spiritual leader, I was forced to put things out positively, to lead practices, to lead ritual, right? And I don't have that anymore. So now I'm like, wow, lazy sometimes. And it's so much easier. It's so much easier. I'm gonna end with this. If I'm working Beauty, my beautiful quarter horse mare, right? And we're working together, she can't start eating grass. I can't allow that. If I allow that, then that's lazy. She's not working. She's not in active mode. She's eating, right? In the same way, I have to pull the reins and stop her from doing that. In the same way, my mind, I have to stop eating hay, stop eating the grass. And what I mean by that is maybe I have to stop looking at the news. Maybe I have to stop immersing myself and obsessing on what this group is doing or that group is doing or what that side is saying, or maybe I need to stop that and get to work. What is the work? The work is the evolving of my own soul. So my soul's evolution. And that's exactly what I think Gandhi was referring to. As a Hindu, Gandhi, knew what I was saying earlier about we are one from one source, one soul. All that matters is our own evolution at the end of the day.
Yeah, and it's true of A Course in Miracles also. And sometimes we have issues with the mystic paths because they talk about the illusion of this experience, and it's hard for us to see it as an illusion, and it sounds a little dismissive at times. But that's what spiritual practice takes us to, the ultimate reality as far as this plane goes, which is not the ultimate reality, right? Because there's the truth beyond the earth experience. And there's never been a time when there's been complete and total peace in the entire world. It's just that it's closer to home now. There's so many times that we can see something happening out there to someone else or to something else, and we could say, oh, my thoughts and prayers. But then when it's happening to you, suddenly it becomes a much bigger issue. And so we've grown up our whole lives seeing things happening outside of this country that we felt bad about, but now it's here, it's on our homeland, it's in our faces. And for me, it's in my culture. It's my people that are being targeted. And so it becomes much more personal, which means the spiritual work becomes that much more specific to each individual, that it is now really a testimony to my faith, to am I anchored in spirit, if I can stay within my belief system that this is something that is affecting my nervous system, my brain, my mood. But most importantly, can I then adjust so that I maintain my focus on where can I shift my heart so it doesn't become hardened. During COVID, I used to do live streams out of my home, and people would come and we'd hang out a little bit before we went live, and we'd have snacks and people would speak to each other and always in agreement around certain things. But as soon as it got political, I said, there's one rule. You can go in my refrigerator. You can do whatever you want. You can take stuff home for all I care. No politics. We're not going to talk politics because it changes the mood. It can easily turn into an angry, suddenly everybody's upset, even though they're agreeing on what they're upset about, it's still an upset. And that's where we have to have that heightened awareness of where our minds are going and where our hearts are going as a result.
I mean, I don't want to simplify the fact of like the injustices, and this is a great segue into the second question, that there are these injustices that are happening. I mean, just the injustice of taking the word woke and making it into a demonized adjective. So we don't want people to be awake. We want people to be asleep. What are we awakened to? We're awakening to the fact that we're all one, even though we might look differently, we might come from different places, we might have different orientations or whatever it might be. There are injustices that are happening against people who are other, marginalized, disenfranchised. You know, someday maybe those words are going to be illegal. Maybe we're not going to be able to say the word marginalized anymore. Right now, we're not really able to say that in higher education, in college,
Right.
at the master's level, at the doctoral level, at postdoc level. Grants are being now shut down because if you use that language, marginalized, disenfranchised. I look at that, Dean Laurie, and I say that is an absolute injustice that is happening. We can't be aware anymore of diversity. We can't be culturally competent anymore. What does that all mean? And it doesn't make sense to me. It just doesn't compute for somebody who's 65 years old, as you, champions of that which is awakening. But to be awakened is to be woke, and that is to be a demon. That's the demon of the century, to be woke. So when you witness acts of injustice, what practice keeps us from falling into this despair or anger? Even me just raising the question makes me angry.
Right. Right. And you're really seeped in it because of all you've had to do as a university professor and all the changes you've had to make. And so that's why we go back to the question, and how can I be anchored in spirit? And this specific question is what we're witnessing acts of injustice, and what practice keeps us from falling into despair. And as I said earlier, we may have moments of despair. You know, there may be, we can't deny the fact that we have our feelings about what's going on. What we don't want to do is to make it worse by not trying to find balance within ourselves. I'm not, it'd be really easy for me to just complain all day and to find people who want to be mad with me, because, but we already know that that's happening. You know, what can we do? We have to look at practical steps we can take as citizens. And that's a little bit separate from what we're talking about, as spiritual beings, as spiritual warriors, hopefully. And those are things, like voting and the peaceful marches, the peaceful protests, the calls and the writing and anything that we might be able to do. And hopefully the pendulum will swing. I can't imagine, and I hope that it will not stay as extreme. It's almost like, things get worse before they get better. Like, does Shiva destroy before the rebuilding?
Right.
We have to maintain our hope as well. But I want to answer the question very specifically. I was talking earlier this week about a lesson in A Course in Miracles, 282, lesson 282. It says, I will not be afraid to love today. If I could just recognize this, salvation would be reached for all the world. This is a decision not to be insane, not to be insane. What would be the insanity is to participate in anything that's going to make it worse. And so when I want to clarify this thing about not being afraid to love, and what I told the folks I was speaking with, I said, we can't try and pretend that we're going to love the people we're currently upset with. That's almost, for me, let me confess, that's too far of a reach right now. I will confess, I do not love the people I see attacking families and dragging them by violent means to prisons. I don't love them. I don't feel like I can. But what I can love, I can love the tow truck drivers who are driving up to the ICE vehicles and throwing them away because they're illegally parked. That's happening in all the cities. Tow truck drivers are driving behind ICE agents and taking their vehicles so that they have to identify themselves. They have to go and give ID and show who they are in order to get their vehicles back. I can love them. I can love the peaceful protesters. I can love the people who, I can extend extra love to the people whose families are being hurt, love and compassion. That's the best I can do right now. That's the best I can do. And that's my confession, because I know we're ultimately supposed to even love the ones that are causing what we perceive to be great harm right now. But I will just do what I can. to focus on the places where I can send love, because at least it's still the opening of my heart in some direction. And there was a quote from the Talmud, which we teach our students when we're doing studies in Judaism. It says, "Do not be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. Do justly now. Love mercy now. Walk humbly now. You are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it."
Great. All right.
My rant.
When I witness these acts of injustice, right now, the practice that keeps me from falling into despair or anger is being on beauty, grooming her, feeding her, walking her, riding her. I can't think of anything else that's going on except that. And I just recently got hurt a little bit on her. It wasn't her fault. It was my fault. I wasn't sitting right. I wasn't grounded in the seat. Talk about anchoring in spirit. I wasn't grounded enough. I was off balance and I was too loose on the reins. Just like technically, I was too loose with them. And so she started to go from a trot into a canter, which I didn't ask her to do. And I got really scared and off balance and thrown forward. And I almost went over. I almost fell off, but I didn't, thank God. But I got hurt in any event. And so I can't be on beauty, and this is maybe probably like a little bit of maybe a metaphor. I can't be on beauty. That's the name of my quarter horse mare. I can't be on her if I'm not 100% mindful, if I'm not 100% in this present moment, right here, right now. I'm going to mention your friend, Thich Nhat Hanh, who you know very well because you went to Plum Village. He has this whole thing about eating a cookie and petting a cat. I think it's something like that. And then it's just that is the ultimate joy in that moment, right here, right now. When I'm on beauty, I'm not thinking about anything. I'm not thinking about the world. I'm not thinking about politics. I'm not thinking about the injustices because I'm just trying not to focus on that. I'm trying to focus on her and staying on her and staying balanced and communicating with her. Now, some people might say to me, that's very selfish. That's out of touch. What kind of a spiritual leader are you that you're willing to shut the cries of the world out and focus on something else? And I go back again to the first question. I go back again to what Gandhi said about it's whatever I'm seeing, it's here that I need to focus on. And that doesn't mean put my head in the sand and let poor people be unjustly treated and abused and tortured. No, I do need to do something about that because that person is my brother. That person is my sister. So, I mean, this whole thing is like really confusing and it's not easy to apply any of what we're talking about. I find that it's not. It's a big challenge. So I don't know if that was inspirational or that
Yes,
was just upsetting.
the importance of being mindful in the moment, and being in the moment is about mindfulness. And Thich Nhat Hanh, I can tell you an example. Since you brought up my retreat, I was watching him show as an example how it is to be mindful in the moment. And he was talking about the teapot, the tea kettle going off, how it makes a piercing sound. And the piercing sound is disturbing, just like what's going on out here is disturbing, right? And he says, but I get up and I walk to the teapot and I pour the tea. And he's like, all of this now becomes a mindfulness practice, the Zen of making tea. So you're moving mindfully and carefully through the world, and the sound is disturbing, but you pour the tea. There's things that we can do. We can the equivalent might be, so now I go to the beach and I walk on the water's edge. The disturbance is in me, but I'm taking it to the water's edge. I'm being mindful when I'm with a loved one, with a beloved pet. There's ways that we can just truly be seeped in those moments, and we could turn those moments into Zen, into spiritual practice. Yeah. And just really appreciate that cup of tea, taking mindfully, carefully, go and taking the tea kettle off the fire so it's no longer piercing. The sound is disturbing, the tea is delicious. So it's so many things in life that can be disturbing, and how we interact with it will make a difference. So yeah, the idea of being anchored in spirit is a tough one, but it's what our practice leads us toward, or else what's the alternative? It's like the
exactly
raven, the wings get stronger so that they can fly through the storm. We're in the storm right now.
No, and look, it's these are real people. These are real families. There's, like just across the board, everything that is going on today with executive orders and edicts and, what feels like dictator rulings, whatever, without getting into, too much trouble, because censorship seems to be a thing also today. When I stay in the moment, the outside world goes away. Jesus in the scriptures talk about, like, you read the scripture and you learn about it and are reminded that there were times where Jesus walked away. He walked away from the crowd. He walked away from all of the, what was going on, all of the noise, all of the static. He walked away and he needed to pray. He went off to pray. Sometimes he went off for days to pray. I know Shiva went to meditate for 1,000 years. Anyway, you say, was Jesus turning his back then on the problems? Was Jesus turning his back on the disturbing noise? Yeah, maybe he was in that moment. Maybe he had to. Maybe in order for him to anchor in spirit, he had to walk away and go pray. One other analogy, when I was a diver, especially in New York, you would dive, visibility was like zero. Like you couldn't see your hand in front of you. Also, the surface was so rough, and it was really, really nauseating, and you're bobbing like an apple. But as soon as you went down and got some depth and continued to focus on your breathing and just continued to descend deeper, deeper, anchoring yourself, suddenly there was no more surface chaos. It was still. There was a stillness and a quietness where you could really be connected with yourself, with spirit, with your breath. I don't want people who are watching this to think that we're suggesting that we put our heads in the sand, that we put our covers over our heads and tune out the cries of the families that are being separated, the families that are being tortured, the individuals who are having their visas suddenly, taken away from the. I'm not suggesting that. I'm not saying that we don't care about it and we don't get upset about it. This is the part, Dean Laurie, that I don't understand. Like, everything that I'm saying is true about getting depth, anchoring in, going off to pray. But at the same time, do I turn my back on my brothers and sisters who are suffering because of these, dictatorial edicts?
Well, I think we look at what it is that we can do. And our conversation today is about not making it worse by just focusing on what is happening with, we're not saying not to have compassion, but if we just focus on it and complain and call each other up and talk about how much we hate what's happening, we might miss the opportunity to do something differently, because we do want to give hope to others. We do want to say, hey, what is it that you think we can do? And like I said earlier, even if it's just going to a peaceful march and being among the numbers, being a counted among the many, The No Kings March is this coming Saturday, October 18th, in case anybody watches this before. There is power in numbers, and there is power in voting. There are things that we can do. If there's places where people can go, safe houses where we can take food, these things have been done in other countries, and it looks as though we have to do them now. We know, like when Roe v. Wade got turned down or reversed, people created safe areas where women could go cross county or cross the state. Things do come up. Help does rise. And I think that we're starting to see that. We're starting to see that with politicians, even, who aren't afraid to confront some of what is going on.
Yeah.
And especially the confrontation of Christian nationalism. Okay, I'm going to say it. For people who are pointing out the hypocrisy of that, and the importance of continuously speaking truth versus just talking heads. So if we get shut down for for this podcast, then we know we're being heard, and that's all that matters, is that we continue using our voices, not to be afraid to use our voice, but also to use our voice and this forum for the encouragement that people not lose hope, and that people do what they can, how they can, where they are, but to also be anchored in spirit, to also do your spiritual practices, to continue to pray, to continue to do those mindful things. Go enjoy your time with your loved ones. Enjoy the lakes and the mountains and the water, wherever you are. There's ways where you can take those sacred pauses that Jesus took, as you mentioned. I've heard the term sacred pause. I'm not sure where it came from, but it's a way to just take a breath from the upset that's going on inside you.
Yeah.
From a place of centeredness, maybe you can take another look at it and find a way to be a voice of compassion and hope and love.
Yeah.
Like I said, even if all you can love is the tow truck driver, if that's all you can do in one day. And when I was doing hospice work, it used to be so constant death and dying and dynamics, and sometimes I would just sort of disappear for a while. I'd go into the chapel, and people would say, "Where'd you go?" I'd say, "I needed to go drain my brain." I wish I knew the term sacred pause at the time, but that might have sounded like I was just trying to be a little too good at what I'm doing, when in fact I wasn't. I was just overwhelmed. I just needed to go take a break. And sometimes that's really all anybody needs to do.
Yeah. 100%. I just thought of another analogy, but I did want to mention that it's like we've talked a little bit about, this country, our country, United States, and what's happening here, and how we can get caught in, well, first of all, like the question that we asked each other, when you witness acts of injustice, like there's too numerous to mention, but there's also a global injustice that's happening. The people of Gaza, the Palestinian people. It's wonderful that there's a ceasefire. That is wonderful. There is a great injustice that is happening there, where folks, their whole lives have been obliterated. So, like, the injustices, they're a lot. When I get in a plane and I take off, I no longer see the little streets. You don't see the streets anymore. Like when we take off from Fort Lauderdale or Orlando or wherever you're taking off from, you can, like, in the beginning, you could be like seeing, wow, oh yeah, look, I can see there's somebody's pool in their backyard, right? But then as it gets more altitude, more altitude, more altitude, as we gain altitude, we can no longer see the borders. We can no longer see these categories of people or villages or communities. It's just Earth after a while, right? And if it was even like a rocket, then beyond a plane, it would really be that. And then you'd really just see Earth. And you'd say it's all one, you know? Um, Gaining altitude is the same as getting that depth and anchoring in. And that altitude comes with a higher consciousness. So, last and final question: how has your tradition guided you in sustaining community? because we've been talking a little bit about the individual journey, if you will, the individual anchoring of spirit. But how do we guide that into sustaining our community when the world feels so divided?
Well, like you mentioned earlier, you no longer have the weekly commitment to darshan, so you feel like, oh, I'm not constantly being put in a position to have to give a message. But I've sort of put myself in that position. LMC Interfaith Ministries, we continue to provide programming, and I think I do that mostly because I want to continue having the conversation that you can only have with spiritual community or people who are really dedicated to a spiritual practice that you might not be able to have with people who just want to talk about their anger and their upset. There has to be a balance. And so, I continue doing the full moon gatherings once a month. I have a couple of meetings a month. One is for Women Embracing Spirit. It's a women's spirituality group. We have a spiritual social group where each person in the group picks some spiritual topic that they want to discuss. I send out a daily inspirational message through WhatsApp, just trying to keep that continuity of spiritual connection. I have some spiritual prayer partners. And, without that, that's like vitamins, that's like the sustaining of the spiritual practices through spiritual community. So there's something that we can do on our own or with our loved ones. And then there's things that we can do in community to keep that momentum, keep that momentum going.
There's a Darshan has now sort of transitioned into a different ministry. We were a congregational ministry, a weekly, and then even like weekly programming on top of the Sunday sacred celebration. But now we're focused on the prison ministry. That's what we're doing right now. And anything that you and I are doing together through seminary is also a way to get the word out. I stopped doing single, podcasts. I stopped doing any of that work. Also, it's not a surprise. I'm being very honest. I was extremely burnt out as a pastor, right? There's no other way to say it. It's a Christian term, I know, but as a spiritual leader, I was burnt to a crisp, and I needed to anchor in spirit and get rejuvenate myself because it was rough. And when I look back and I say, do I miss it? There's so many aspects that I don't miss, but there are some aspects that I do. And that was the sort of discipline. It was structured. Like I had to do it. I had to look at the scriptures of all the different faith practices, come up with themes, all of that stuff. The music, my music is like a big tradition for me, is a big spiritual practice for me. I haven't done it in such a long time. And I was going to do a kirtan for the Healing Solutions Center, which is run by Susan Cohen here in Dunellen. And we were all set and ready to go. We were going to do it. You were going to watch us. We were going to live stream it. And then somebody got COVID and we just canceled the whole thing. I don't know if we'll reschedule it, but my point is, I don't know. My community is changing. I need inspiration, I think. I have not gone to the Temple of the Universe in Gainesville. It's right here, Michael Singer. Haven't done it. Haven't done it. Haven't felt moved to do it. I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with me, but I still believe in my tradition. I do. I still have faith and I still have a faith practice, but I don't know, Dean Laurie. That's why I really appreciate us doing this because it forces me and it makes me pay attention. And maybe this is, right now I just start baby steps with this community. Just me and you. I don't know.
We are, and we will continue. And we have our alumni that we'd like to get feedback from, and we have the opportunity to just continue building whatever it is we feel inspired to build. Maybe it is more podcasting. I'm still doing Miracles with a Twist, which is on my my YouTube channel. And whenever you feel moved to do so, you can also do an inspirational message, and you and I will continue as well. I also have a prayer partner that we hold each other accountable every Thursday. We call it going into the temple. And so every Thursday morning is going into the temple. And so when we speak, we'll say, how did you go into the temple this week? And she'll tell me what her spiritual practice was, and I'll tell her what my spiritual practice was. So we're accountable to each other as prayer partners. And so what it does, it could take a simple and mundane activity and make it sacred.
Yeah.
You know, I did extra Tai Chi, or I sat down and I wrote, but instead of looking at it as something I have to do, I think of it as something sacred that I'd like to do in honor of this moment of being in the temple. So it's sort of
Yes.
cyber temple.
I love it. I love it. You know, the other thing, I just want to give myself a break a minute, you know, and because I know I get very hard on myself. The work that we did at Darshan, 13 years of that work was beneficial, and it was hard, but it was effective. And I do need a break. I did need a break. I do need to rejuvenate. I do need like a what do you call it when you like a reset? Like you have to reset, reboot, reimagine. And that's, I mean, we call our land, this is a sanctuary called Pieve. Pieve means old medieval church in Italian. And on this sanctuary, on this land, are these two beautiful beings, Beauty and Bliss, the horses and the pony, and you know, Pache, of course, the Jack Russell. And my vision, it's like a little seed vision. And I don't want to do anything extravagant and big, but I would like it to be sustained. But you know, fires, like we still haven't built a fire pit. We have to do that. We haven't done that yet. Somehow incorporate the beauty of the horses, their being, who they are, and having that as a meditation, as a prayer, as a connection with a higher power. Darshan, visit with the divine. So, I mean, these are some things that I got going on in my head, but I haven't had, I haven't been, I haven't really recovered yet, is what it is. I haven't recovered yet. I'm still in recovery from burnout that I need to realign myself, and I think it will happen, but I don't know when.
It's unfolding. I also want to say that the other two beautiful beings on that land are you and Chris, Sister Chris. And
Yes.
now
Yeah.
you're amazing. You've been great inspiration to many people. Think of all the students whose lives we've touched and that you've touched through the people that were at Darshan and who love Darshan and Kirtan, you know. So yeah, I do think you're being hard on yourself, and I know you as a beloved, wonderful spirit. And hey, you're having your sacred time right there as you're on your horses, being mindful, being loving, being compassionate. So from my heart to yours, I know you're doing the right thing and going in the
Thank
right.
you. And
Thank
you
you.
too. And you too. Thank you for your commitment, for your, you know, no matter what, you're like part of the no matter what club. You just, no matter what, you still provide spiritual insight for all of the community that follow you. So thank you for always doing that and being such an amazing trailblazer on all of it. I would ask you in your closing prayer, if I'm putting you on the spot, I didn't say this pre-show here, but I hope that it's all right with you. One of our Darshan members, a dear, dear, dear Darshan member's husband died unexpectedly, very young. It's very tragic. And I just would like us to lift him up in prayer for comfort, for courage, for strength to get through this really difficult time.
Interestingly enough, on that sad note, I got right before I came on with you, I got a call from a friend who had a sudden death in her family as well. So for that and for all the pain and heartache of everyone right now, why don't we just take a moment to be together, breathing heart to heart, soul to soul. And we breathe the suffering that is in the world. And when we exhale, we release the suffering that's in the world and ask all that is holy and sacred to hold us gently during this time of transformation, so that there is balance, so that there is peace. And especially for those people who had their loved ones taken too soon, today, yesterday, these past few days, that they find the comfort that only mourners can find in the quiet time, when they're holding their hearts, clenching to the memory and the desire to keep their loved ones close. The paradox of life is that we have to let go. And so we give it all up to Spirit, and we ask Spirit to guide us, to remind us what it is to have eyes of love, hearts of compassion, and words that speak kindly, and see brothers and sisters in the world, all who we pass, all who we know, all who we love, and especially those we don't love. We ask to be holding them with the confidence that light and peace will endure. May it be so, and may it prevail. Blessed be. Amen. Oh,
Thank you. Thank you. Love you.
love you. We'll be back.